Then I used to serve the devil. Now I kind of make him nervous. Well, I grew up Old Order Amish in Ohio, born and raised Amish. Grandfather was the main bishop, my mom's dad. I got to change. That's it. I'm going to have to go out and just splatter my beers. You know, I don't want to, but I feel this urge. I need to go.
That's an interesting
If you even get
concept.
one vote no, let's say you have an enemy, which everybody does.
Yeah.
My dad had quite a few. So if it's one enemy that don't like you, if he votes no, that one vote no now delays your shunning period for another 2 weeks, because we only go to church services in our own homes every 2 weeks, because this is how I was thinking at 18 when I left. So I was like, okay, if I'm going to go to hell, then I'm going to go have fun and live how I want to live until I go to hell.
Hey, beautiful people. Welcome to Escaping the Chains podcast. I am your host, John Humphreys. Wait till you see what we have in store for you today. We are excited to have Eli Yoder with us today. Brother Eli, how are you doing?
Doing fantastic. Thank you very much for having me.
Tell us a little bit about yourself for those of us that don't know your background or follow you on social media.
Well, I grew up Old Order Amish in Ohio, born and raised Amish. Grandfather was the main bishop, my mom's dad. So I was expected to walk a fine line, you know, a lot of rules, a lot of legalism. And at age 18, I left the Amish to try to find purpose, trying to find peace. I just had enough of the power and control, so my dad struggling with it. So I left at age 18, became a severe alcoholic after that because, I just couldn't find peace and purpose. I just kept struggling, but I thought that, I'd find happiness somewhere, you know, joy and happiness. But I hung around the ones that did all the drugs and alcohol, and, that also had an end. And that's why I say, you know, having me on here just to share testimony on a Friday and Saturday night, I enjoy it more now, because then I used to serve the devil. Now I kind of make him nervous.
Yeah. Now we try to fight him.
Right.
So Eli is going to be speaking at our Friday night service that we do on Fridays, and you'll hear us talk about that from time to time. It's a service that we do here in Marion, and I think it is cool that we do it on Friday night, because Friday night used to be you were getting ready. You know what I mean? Getting ready to do something not holy. At least I wasn't.
Yeah.
When you say old order Amish, what does that mean?
Well, there's different levels of Amish, just like you would have denominational churches out here in the non-Amish world, where you have, you know, Pentecostal, you got Catholic, you got Methodist, Nazarene, you got all these different denominations. The Amish are all different the same way. Most people from the outside looking in to have no idea that every Amish community has their own church ordinance with the rules. Baptized members agree and make an oath at baptism, which is 17 and 18 years old when you do that. And you swear and make an oath between God and the Amish church that you're going to follow those rules in that church ordinance that you were born and raised in for the rest of your life. And we were one of the more conservative groups where you couldn't have bicycles, which that's the reason I mentioned that is because that's what disqualified me for baptism in the Amish is I rode a bicycle. Most Amish allow bicycles, even e-bikes, you know, especially in Indiana, Holmes County, Ohio. Well, so that I use that to kind of show people how they're all different. Some don't allow any power tools. Some allow power tools for business use only, but not for personal use. So every Amish community is different with their own rules. So I would say our group that I'm from, we're only about a 1% that are that strict.
Really?
Yeah.
So they were strict amongst the strict.
Yes.
In our world, you know what I mean? It all seems kind of strict to us. I had seen a video where you said you have a twin brother.
Yes.
And he left and went to a more liberal Amish community. Is that what happened?
Yeah, my twin brother and then my younger brother, is a couple of years younger than I am, both relocated to Tennessee to more of we call them New Order Amish, because they're allowed to have like solar power. They can have a phone shack at the end of the driveway, which in our group you couldn't have any phone at all.
Yeah.
You have to go to the English neighbors. We call everybody else English.
Yeah.
That is not Amish. So we would go borrow their phone, but you couldn't own it or have it on your property. So down there, they felt like they were experiencing a lot of freedom.
Yeah.
Because, hey, we can have power tools for construction. We can have a phone shack with solar power, and they had running water in their house. And the first time I went to visit them, I'm like, wait a minute, why did I leave the Amish? I mean, this is pretty cool because we were so strict.
Yeah.
And then he takes me in and shows me that they have an actual shower, actual bathtub, indoor toilet. In our community, you had to go to an outhouse. I'm like, wow, this is a huge difference compared to my Old Order group. So they clearly were experiencing a lot more freedom there when they relocated down there.
So is he still there?
Yes.
So what's the relationship like with him? With you not, would it be practicing Amish? Is that what you would call it? Like the culture or whatever, with you not being in that, are you guys still close? Do you get to talk? Can you hang out?
Yes.
Everything like that. So are you welcome to go there and visit and
Yes,
stuff?
for his community, we can show up, and we do every year, sometimes twice a year. I take my wife and my son down there, and we just kind of become Amish for the weekend, and we eat their food and stay there, and they're very welcoming. They're not as strict. Back home in the Old Order Amish, Mom said, hey, you have to have your Amish clothes on in order to come out and visit me.
Yeah.
And you got to park your car next door and walk over. So with my twin brother, where he's at, they're not that strict, so I can drive in there, leave my car parked there all weekend, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, help them. I even plowed his garden last year.
Yeah.
Eat their food at the same table, and it's pretty cool because they're not near as strict and they're not as controlling. I would
Controlling.
say. Yeah.
So let's get into it, because I want to unpack and hear your whole testimony. I've Zach OTG Zico kind of introduced us, and so I did a little bit of research. You know what I mean, watching your TikToks and things like that. But so let's talk about, how did you get to a place like before you left? Like, what was life like, and what was it that what were the challenges? What were the things that you kind of miss? I can tell, like, in your there's things you still practice that you learn there. A lot of things I think we all should, probably, especially for health purposes and food purposes and things like that.
Right.
But so you just kind of let's just walk through your story as from childhood to where you made the decision, like, I'm gonna take off and experience life outside of here.
Yeah, it was clearly a lifestyle that I still admire. I mean, I think the whole world can learn from the Amish lifestyle. Just, they don't depend on government resources from anybody else. They're dependent on their own resources, living off the land. They grow their own foods, gardening, canning. We can all of our own meats. The lifestyle is not why I left.
When you say you can the meats, I want to touch on this.
Okay.
So I saw a video, and you said, like, you didn't sit down and have, like, steak and hamburger. Like, when they can the meat, what was that like, actually?
So the pressure cookers we used was just like the vegetables. You put them all in there with your water and your salt, your ingredients, and then you turn the lid on and put it in the pressure cooker, and there's no electric. You don't plug it in. It's just on a wood-burning stove. Mm-hmm. So when we butchered a cow and a hog and the chickens, we put that meat in chunks right in there the same way as the vegetables and can it. So I never even heard of steak.
That's wild.
I never heard of a hamburger. So when Mom had us kids go down the basement and bring that meat up, we took the lid off, dumped it in a pan, and warmed it up. It's the chunks of the chicken or hamburger. Yeah. It's never the kind of meat you would see out here.
And what's the shelf life on that too? Because that kind of
5-6 years.
5-6 years.
Yeah,
that's crazy.
Yeah.
That's so wild to me.
And by the way, I still do that today.
Yeah, I've seen some videos. He's pulling out corn from 2020. You know what I mean? So, and we'll get back into the story, but like with that, so what was it like when, like, the first time somebody put a steak or a burger in front of you? What were you thinking?
Yeah, it was new to me, so I didn't even really know how to eat it. Right. I mean, it was delicious, obviously, but it was just new.
Yeah.
It was delicious. I loved going to, restaurants when I first left and experiencing that kind of food, but it was all different than what I was used to. So it was definitely something that in the Amish, especially Old Order where I'm from, we had taxi drivers that would stop by restaurants or fast food. So I had a little bit of outside food here and there, but not to the level of steak or, some of the foods that you would have out here as far as the restaurants like Applebee's and stuff like that.
Yeah. All right, let's continue on the story now. I'm gonna stop you from time to time because some of it fascinates me. I think just the shelf life alone, it's like, what?
Right.
You know what I mean? Because I've always wondered, like, how did people live in the 1800s? Like they had it figured out better than we've got it figured out now.
But yeah, I mean, as far as the lifestyle, at a young age, clearly I thought obeying the church. Mom and dad got baptized. All of the elders, my aunts, uncles, everybody at that age got baptized, and they followed the church rules. I saw them get shunned. Now, at a very young age, just because we were Amish doesn't mean we don't have the same issues. Like my dad, he abused us physically a lot, and so that sucked. And I always wondered, are other kids being beaten? I was told I was bad, so I deserved it. So lots of times I couldn't sit for, a week. because I was beaten that bad. So sometimes I would wonder if other kids are also being disciplined that way. But I never viewed it as abuse.
Yeah.
I saw Mom get beat to a pulp a few times, but I just wanted to kind of bring that out as how, from the outside looking in, people may view the Amish as, well, they got it all together. They're good Christians. They follow the Bible. But my dad had a lot of depression. He was an alcoholic, and I saw him not be able to follow the church rules a whole lot. So at a very young age, it was embarrassing to watch Dad in church have to go sit separate because he was shunned. He couldn't eat with baptized members, and you're kind of.
So why was he? Was it because of the drinking, or?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Instead of helping him and say, "Hey, how can we pray for you?" To help him through his depression and alcoholism, he got shunned for it. Which, looking back now, every time he got shunned, it just added to his depression. He would just drink more. It didn't help him get delivered from it. So it spiraled out of control to where the Amish eventually would send him to what's called an Amish counseling facility. But that's just Amish minded. You got to submit to the system, submit to the leaders, the bishop, and all of that. So they program you that way rather than true deliverance to help you from it. So when he come home from that, he was a bull. He was like a raging bull. It was even worse. So sometimes he would it sounds bad, it's my dad. If he came in the front door, I tried to go out the back door.
Yeah.
That's just the kind of mentality.
So when you say shunned, that's another thing I think sometimes on the outside, because I always thought shunned was like you were not allowed in, but so you could still operate in the community. You were just kind of pushed away. How does that work?
He couldn't do any business during the shunning. So you can't take any money from a baptized member. You can't take any food from a baptized member, which means my mom. So when I was a little boy, I saw Dad sitting in a corner. He had to prepare his own meal. He had to get his own silverware. Now, us kids could help him giving that because we wasn't baptized yet. But he had to eat separately, and in church he had to eat separately. So he was always, they do this to make you feel shameful until you show remorse. If you show remorse, then they'll vote on your forgiveness, and then you're taken back as a church member.
They vote on your forgiveness.
Yes.
That's an interesting
If you even get one
concept.
vote no, let's say you have an enemy, which everybody does.
Yeah.
My dad had quite a few. So if it's one enemy that don't like you, if he votes no, that one vote no now delays your shunning period for another 2 weeks, because we only go to church services in our own homes every 2 weeks because the other district goes the in-between week. So now 2 more weeks is added just because one of your enemies said, no, I'm not voting yes, so he's going to have to wait 2 more weeks. So my dad had to go through all of that.
So basically you didn't have any real interaction with somebody else that was baptized.
Right. So there's no making money. So you're kind of isolated because you can't do anything. You can't do no business. Yeah, you can go out and plow your field. You can do your own work that needs done on the farm. You're free to do that. But you can't go to any of the community events. You can't participate in buying, selling, go into an auction. Even a barn raising, they can't touch the board you're going to lift up to put a nail in it. So you can't even be part of the barn raising, and you just got to stay home, and you're just kind of isolated. So shunning is pretty brutal.
Yeah, it sounds like it would be mentally... It sounds like it'd be mentally tough, to be honest, because you can't leave, right? Like if you leave, then you got a whole other set of problems. So it's not like you could just take off and go hang out outside of the, the network
and again,
for a while.
Every community is different. Some of the New Order Amish are not as strict on the shunning and how they practice shunning, but they all have a shunning phase where they want you to feel shameful of what you've done if you broke any of the church rules. And drinking was clearly not okay in any Amish church. So they would always practice shunning if somebody was caught drinking alcohol.
Yeah, I think that's something that we want to touch on too. So we're talking about Eli's story, and we're talking about like the circumstances you were raised in. It's not not all of it's a reflection of a whole, a whole entire people. It's just like with anything else. Yes. How did you get alcohol then? If it wasn't really welcome in the community, how were they getting it? Did he make it himself, or?
Well, Mom couldn't make any more homemade wine for church, communion reasons because my dad was an alcoholic.
Oh, so
he used to get it that way.
So you have communion wine. I got you.
Yes. Now, every Amish family is known to do construction. So my dad did construction for non-Amish people, and those are the ones that would hook him up with the alcohol. Go to the regular drive-through, go to the gas station, and get his Bud Light or Budweiser, whatever he liked, and that's how he got his alcohol.
Yeah, that makes sense. When I first got sober, I was house sitting for my friend. I think I was staying in a motel, and he Aaron Euler, my guy, and he had me house sit for him. Well, while I was house sitting, he had a pool and everything, but he had these huge windows in a maybe it's a milk barn, but the glass was so heavy he couldn't get a construction company to mess with it. So the Amish were working on it, and so the Amish are out there working on it while I'm house sitting. So I'm off the streets maybe 2 months, you know what I mean? And our interactions were very interesting because two totally different worlds. I had no shame in anything, you know what I mean? And we had my friend Aaron was a sheriff's deputy, so he had a sheriff's deputy. He had a sheriff's car in the driveway. This family pulls up all crazy. So the Amish had the one guy that was driving them around and would use the phone and take care of stuff. And then they were working, and their work ethic's crazy. They were out there pulling something that construction companies didn't even want to mess with because that glass was so heavy and thick. So this family pulls up in the driveway, and the kid is fighting with the parents. And the kid is he was bigger than me. And he's in the back seat. He's swinging on everybody. And they pulled up in the driveway because they saw a sheriff's deputy's car there. And so everybody comes running out, and the interaction. So a local cop pulls up. So you have me, who's been sober for, 8 weeks at best. You've got the guy who is driving them around, who's a totally different, and then you've got them, and they're just like, and then you've got the cop, and then you've got this family that's like, we can't do anything with this kid because he keeps swinging on us. And I was looking around, and I talked to Aaron later, and I was like, dude, you're never going to believe, you couldn't make this up for a Saturday Night Live skit, man. Maybe there was 5 or 6 of them, and then you had the police officer. He rolled up and was probably like, what is going on here? Because I'm out there in sweats and my hat tilted, and then they got this kid swinging on people, and then you got the Amish guys out there. But what was interesting is they weren't like afraid or anything. They were out there like, oh, what's going on? You know what I mean? Trying to get the story. Mm-hmm. So there's not really a point to that story other than I always wondered what it was like for that city cop to pull up to that scene and be like, dude, this can't be good. I don't know what's going on here. So alcohol is something that can obviously be a problem in the Amish community, just like we have out here. Is drugs or anything like that anything that's really heard of?
Yeah, it happens in certain areas. We heard the stories of certain communities where they had those issues where you got some kind of outside influence to even grow the marijuana plants. There was a guy that got busted for that in our community, and so he always got shunned and he stopped doing it. But it happens. We're humans just like any other culture. We had issues.
Yeah. So I think the shunning thing's interesting because I always wondered. I always, you hear about that, and we have a way that we use it out here. Like, you've been shunned, which is completely. I guess I thought that, Zach. I thought that's kind of what that was too. Is like if you got shunned by the Amish community, you're out. But it's not really.
A lot of people thought that's a shunning where now Eli Yoder can never return. Mm-hmm. But shunning is just practice for baptized members that didn't obey all the rules.
So if you were to return, if you're like one day you woke up and you're like, I'm going to return, would they take you back?
Depends on which community. For my community, it's an absolute no because I've gotten tattoos and they believe that's an unforgivable sin. Mm. And another sin they believe is unforgivable is divorce. So if anybody wanted to join the Amish in my group, you couldn't if you had any of those. But there's a lot of New Order Amish where if I'd have left my sleeve down where they can't see my tattoos, then you can join them. So it just depends on which district.
Zach, we'd be screwed on the tattoos thing, bub. So can anybody, if somebody was interested on the outside, would they be able to join the Amish? How does that work?
Yeah, it's really hard, obviously, but there was one individual that made it, and he went over to Southern Ohio and became a deacon, and he ended up with 17 children. He's the only one to this day that I remember successfully joining the Amish, had a large family, and even became a preacher and then a deacon later. So I've seen, I'd say a dozen or more that tried it and then failed because the one was 44 years old. He joined the Old Order Amish in Maine. And as soon as he was baptized and they cut him off from having his English family visit, they were going to cut him off. And he said, well, that's not love. You didn't tell me this before I joined you. So then he ended up leaving. He actually reached out on my TikTok and had me line up a driver and picked him up.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh, good stuff. So with your father, you kind of have this stuff going on. So I'm assuming in this community, when it comes to like the punishment, it's probably not something that do the kids get around and kind of talk about like, hey, does your dad, or is it something you just what's in your house stays in your house kind of thing?
Yeah, they try to keep it that way.
Yeah.
I mean, people do talk. I mean, other kids saw my dad being shunned, so me and my siblings got bullied a lot in school. Oh, your dad's a drunk. And so that sucked. You had bullies because of our dad being different. We didn't really know of any other Amish men that had such a drinking problem. At least they wasn't being shunned for it. So Dad was kind of the black sheep in the community for that.
Yeah. So as you're going through this, you get older. Like at what point were you kind of like, I don't know if this is the place that I want to be?
I remember as early as 12 years old, I thought, I don't want to be here. I'd like to try the outside life, but as great fear grips your heart when you think that. Because since childhood, innocent, young-minded, 1.5, 2 years old, you're taught that if you're not Amish, you can't get to heaven. You can't please God. So you have to be Amish. And so therefore, when I had those thoughts of, I want to change my lifestyle, this sucks, I want to leave. Oh, I can't do that because I'd go to hell.
Yeah.
So that was my mindset at a very young age. And then even up into the teenage years when I was working with Dad, where we started kind of having a better relationship, breaking rules with him, even drinking with him. Even then I'm like, man, he's living like that. Who cares if I left? I've heard of stories of other people leaving. So then my mindset kind of shifted to, well, others tried it. But then again, in church, some of the ones that tried it and maybe got killed in an accident, the preachers would use that as a sermon. And it was like fear gripping you, like God killed that person in a car accident because they left and broke away from the promise, the oath they made at baptism. So then that would really strike you with fear, like, oh man, I don't want to get killed in a car crash.
On a smaller scale, like there's churches, the westernized church, there's some of them that will do like, oh, this person left our church. And, now they work at Burger King. Like they have these things that they do to where it's like, oh, if I leave, and it's probably not as intense because like, you can kind of come and go from church, it wasn't raised, but I think it's a tactic that you see a lot of people that want control, even if it's unintentional, but they want control. So it's like, oh, if you leave here, you're never going to be as close to God. You'll never, your kids aren't safe if you leave here. Like everything will just be a disaster in your life if you walk away from this place.
It's a fear tactic that the enemy will use to try to control you. So for example, this sounds bad, but this is how I was thinking at 18 when I left. So I was like, okay, if I'm going to go to hell, then I'm going to go have fun and live how I want to live until I go to hell. That was my mindset at age 18 when I finally left.
Yeah. So now you're working with your dad. Is it construction?
Yeah.
Okay, because I had seen on one of your videos you said you did some farming too. Like, so do you do all of it, or is there teams of like construction? These guys do the construction, these guys do the farming, or is it all everybody does everything? Yeah,
at the breakfast table in the mornings, we got our assignment for the day. I was usually the plowboy at a young age, but when I got up in the upper teenage years, just before leaving the Amish, Dad always chose me to go work with him because I was the only one that wouldn't tell on Dad. Right. Most of my brothers had this guilty conscience of God's going to do something bad to me if I don't tell Mom that Dad was drinking again or whatever the stuff Dad was doing. Yeah. But for example, I went with Dad one time and it's lunchtime and he's sitting all the way over by himself and he has this thing over his head and I'm like, what is he doing? He gave me my lunchbox, so I'm eating and I'm curious, and I snug up behind him, and he has this cassette player, and he has these earmuffs on, and then I look at this little album he has with this disc. He's jamming out the Dolly Parton. I'm like, okay, he's definitely going to hell because I was so younger, I'm like, oh man, God can't be happy with him listening to Dolly Parton. But I saw Dad starting to have fun, like he was listening to stuff like that, worldly music, and I'm like, man, I want to do that too. But then I didn't tell on Dad. So Dad started realizing, hey, every time I take Eli with me, he doesn't let the cat out of the bag. He keeps the secret. So then that's why he sometimes said, Eli's not going to the fields today. He's going to go help me today. Yeah. But he didn't have any other Amish crew helping him. Because of his drinking, he didn't want to get busted. So it was always just me and him doing little jobs like a deck or a porch. Yeah. Roofing. We did a lot of roofing, barn siding, stuff like that.
The Amish are crazy on a roof. I've seen them up there in the snow on a straight slant. Just it's like, how are they doing that?
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
There's some of the, I don't know any other culture that has a work ethic like they do.
Oh, it's wild. Icy snow and just walking around on, like, you know what I mean? Like I'm walking around I'm in more danger walking on a sidewalk in the snow of falling than them up on a roof where, you know what I mean, if one slip and you're done.
Right.
You're going for a ride first. So he was experimenting. I guess that's what you call it. It seems like he had learned some things that he liked outside of the culture. And so it sounds like, were you getting closer to, or, you know, was it like working with him and stuff? Like, did your bond get better?
Yeah, there was good days and there's bad days. If he was having a bad day, you didn't want to be around him.
Yeah.
But the good days, I try to hang on to those good memories because he would do some wild stuff. For example, he told me one day, we even had our lunch packed. He goes, the English people that we're working for are not home. Let's go watch television. So we went and watched television. And that's the day I realized my dad has a lot of experience flipping through channels. Like, he had this thing figured out.
He's done this before.
He gets to a sports channel where they were doing the dirt bikes, you know, all the little hills, and then you get down and you turn and come back. And then he looks at me and says, when you were on the roof today, did you see that dirt bike down in there? I'm like, well, yeah, but what are you getting at here? And then he says, we're going to go try to do exactly what we're seeing on that TV. So he goes out there and it has dust on it, and he tries to fire this thing up. It wouldn't start for 20 minutes. I'm like, oh, this is God saving him. You know? But then my dad gets it fired up, and oh my goodness, my daddy takes off with this thing, and there was no brake lights. He saw a dip in the field, and he was full blast going at this thing, and he went airborne. And then my dad separates from this dirt bike. His hat flew off, his beard sticking behind his neck, and he goes down below. And I'm running, because I see Dad separate from the dirt bike. I'm running full speed to him. And during that running to get to him, to where I can see down below the hill, I'm thinking, how am I going to explain this to the Amish church and my family? And then I clear the hill, and my dad is down below with his hands up going, yeah, that was awesome. And you know, he was drunk, obviously. He was drinking, and it didn't hurt him. And I said, hey, how about the dirt bike? My dad goes, we'll work for free. We'll work that off. But that's just who he was. He loved having fun, so I had some fun, happy moments with him, even going to he called it a worldly restaurant. Mm-hmm. In Mount Victory, Ohio, there was a restaurant, and he says, hey, today we're not going to eat our lunch Mom packed. We're going to go ahead and just go to the worldly restaurant, and I'm going to introduce you to shrimp. I'm like, what is shrimp? And that's what he did. I got me a big old plate of shrimp, and everything's tasting really good. He's one Bud Light after another. And then these pilots, there's a little airstrip behind the restaurant. So these little Cessnas come flying in. The pilots come in. They're sitting next to us, and they were kind of, eyeballing us. Amish people sitting there. They thought that was pretty cool. My dad gets real talkative when he's drinking. So he strikes up a conversation. I'm still just enjoying my shrimp. and all at once, Dad says, hey, us Amish people have never had an airplane ride. Like, oh no. Of course, what does the one pilot respond with? It would be an honor to take an Amish guy on an airplane ride. So here we go. I'm like satisfied with this worldly shrimp, and all at once I feel like the shrimp's now about to come up. I was about to barf. I'm like, God's going to strike us dead if I go on an airplane, right? And so here we go, and we go in the airplane, and I can't hear a thing Dad is saying up there because these little sessions are really loud.
Yeah.
But then all at once, as the plane turns sideways, I'm leaning on the glass, terrified, thought I was going to die. I noticed something that looks really familiar. It's our Amish farm. Dad told the pilot to fly above the farm, and we're looking down, and out of nowhere, here comes my younger brother out of the barn, between the house and the barn, and he's waving at us. He has no clue that his brother and his daddy are in that airplane. So some of those wild stories like that, I'll never forget. But look who my dad was. Like, I thought he'd go to hell for this stuff, and I knew that if the church found out, Dad is in big trouble. But I still, to this day, the church has no idea about the airplane because I never told anybody.
And if they find out, it means they're breaking the rules because they're not supposed to be watching this anyway, right?
Yes, that's right.
So you're getting good memories, though. You know what I mean? Like it's happening. So your mom, was she still pretty strict and just like, did he frustrate her? Like, what was that like?
Yeah. There was a lot of arguments because she knew he was doing things he shouldn't have been, and she questioned me in depth when I got home. Hey, what all was Dad doing? And I'd just be tight-lipped. I'm like, nope, I ain't saying nothing. Never once did I see Mom shunned. Not once. You see, her daddy was the bishop, my grandfather. So she walked a fine line. She was obedient to the church, all the rules, but Dad was the opposite. Like, they were so night and day difference. I often wonder, like, how did they even get together? I mean, what made him? And the only thing I figure out is because my grandfather started this community in 1951, and he wanted to preserve what he started with those rules. So he made a rule that you can't go to any other Amish community to date. So my dad had limited options, obviously.
Yeah.
So that's the only thing.
How does that work in the Old Order? Does the young man decide who he wants to marry? Is there a lot of family influence? Like, how does that work?
Yeah, you got to stay within your community. You can choose whoever you want, even first cousins in my group. You can marry your first cousin, second cousin. You just can't go to the New Order Amish and get the worldly Amish that allow more worldly things like power tools or battery tools. So the women have tinier caps in some of the New Order Amish. We were strictly forbidden to date any girl in the New Order Amish because of that.
Oh, I see. So there was obviously then friction with that, with the two different personalities. So you've been working with him. At what point do you make the decision, like, okay, I'm leaving? And was it like, and how long did it take you to like actually, whether, I don't know if you packed your bags, but like if you packed, like how long did it take thinking about like really committing to it and then actually going?
Yeah, it took a long time to plan that out because I wanted to leave when I was 16 and I thought I was going to, but the person that I approached and asked was working at the pallet shop next door to our farm. And he broke the news to me, I can't help you while you're 16. You got to be 18, but when you're 18, get back with me.
Yeah.
So I had to hang in there until I was 18, but I knew that I had been through enough. I'm ready to escape all of it. I'm ready to start over fresh, start a new life. And so he stayed to his word. As it approached closer to 18 years of age, I told him that I'm serious. I'm going to leave because the baptism classes lasted 8 weeks. So it's every other Sunday, so it's a total of 16 weeks. And I could not keep the rules the way the rest of my age group did. You know, I got in trouble for just leaving the top button on my collar open. That was too worldly because it shows more of a lay-down collar.
Yeah.
And I even had my cousin in another community make me a shirt with a 3-inch cuff at the end of the shirt, and ours is only 1.5 inches. So I'm breaking dress code rules, and then the final icing on the cake was me riding a bicycle. I grabbed it off the English neighbor's trash pile, and I was really wanting to know what it's like to ride a bicycle. Yeah. I know of other Amish that have bikes. I want one too.
Yeah.
And then when I questioned the church about the other Amish going to heaven with bikes and but we can't, that was the greater sin to question the church. See what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, you're not allowed to question your authority, the bishop and the elders. And so at that point, they announced to me that I disqualified for baptism. And I was just turning 18, and that's when I said, that's it.
So if
I'm leaving now.
You disqualifying, does that mean just for that class, or does that mean so that means you would have had to wait longer to get?
They only do it in the fall, so I would have had to wait a whole year, which is humiliating to wait with the next group because I'm older than the next year.
Because you all grew up together too, so everybody obviously knows like you kind of got Amish held back, I guess is what that is. Yeah. And
the reason it was humiliating for me is because nobody had ever disqualified for Amish baptism in my community. So I'm the first guy disqualifying, and I'm like, yeah, I'm out now. This is too embarrassing. I'm just going to leave. So that's when I got a hold of my buddy. I said, hey, I'm definitely leaving now. And I proved to him, I'm going to be 18. So he picked me up.
Did you talk to your parents about it?
No.
Before you left?
No. My community, like I said, we're like a 1% with strict conservatism. And we don't have the Rumspringa. Like you see in television shows portraying the Amish as having a season of running around Rumspringa, sowing wild oats, experiencing the party life and driving a car. We didn't get that opportunity. So you have to plan your escape in secret. If they find out you're having thoughts of leaving, they'll ship you off to another state in another community where they call it like the Amish counseling facilities, and they'll break you down until you submit to the church. So I was fearful of that, so I kept it top secret. I didn't even tell my own twin brother.
Yeah.
So I had to keep it all secret until I was ready to leave.
So how'd you get out? The neighbor helps, but like what was the...
Well, I had to wait till Sunday morning because I was in a youth group. So the youth group leaves last. So mom and dad, the younger siblings, all went to church. Now it's just me and my twin brother. So now I don't have to worry about them. I just got to worry about my twin brother, which is a lot easier. Yeah. So I had my buddy lined up to meet me there at 9 o'clock. So I looked at my twin brother and I said, hey, I'm not feeling good. Well, you go to church no matter if you're sick. I don't care if you're throwing up. You just don't skip church. And he goes, wait a minute. You're going to leave the Amish, ain't you? See, twins got bond.
Yeah.
We had a great bond. And I said, yep, you're right. What are you going to do, stop me? I said, you should leave too. Come on. Well, he had a girlfriend. I knew he ain't going to leave. He's got an Amish girlfriend, So he said, well, I kind of suspect that you've been acting a little different. I'm like, well, as long as you're not going to stop me. So he went on to church, and my driver pulled up next door in a pallet shop, and
so did he never say anything about it?
My brother?
Yeah.
Well, he did once he went to the New Order Amish where he's at now.
But at the time, he didn't run off and tell him or anything?
Nope. Well, they clearly discovered it when he came to church by himself.
Well, yeah,
Eli ain't with, they knew then that something was up.
So what was that like? So you just take off, and you have this whole world and all these things you've been taught, and now you're surrounded by everything. What was that like?
It was a culture shock. And actually, to be honest with you, it was enough of a culture shock that I thought I'd probably end up coming back. Because it was so anxiety just going into town. There's people everywhere. There's cars everywhere. I go into the store, and we might have went to the store twice in the entire year just to get salt and ingredients and flour and mason jars to can. Yeah. Other than that, we didn't. But when I left the Amish and now in the city with my buddy, I'm like, man, I don't know if I can do this.
What town were you in?
Kenton, Ohio.
Kenton, Ohio?
Yeah, small town, barely 2,000 people, but
a lot.
It was overwhelming for me.
Yeah.
But the biggest shock was, so I wanted a car. I want to know what it's like to drive. My buddy told me, he said, you got to wait. Just be patient. I know you used your cash you saved and you bought this car, but you're going to have to wait until I help you learn how to drive. And then we got to get tags. We got to get insurance. You got to get your license. Well, I couldn't even get my license because my group doesn't allow Social Security numbers. So now they're telling me I got to go get a birth certificate and an ID in order to apply for a Social Security number. But then when I went to get a birth certificate, they said, well, you got to have an ID and a Social Security number. You got to prove who you are. And I'm like, so this took 9 months for me to get all this worked out. I ended up using my Amish school report card, which was issued by the state of Ohio. They report all that back to Ohio. And so I had to use that to prove that I was born and raised Amish before I could get the ball rolling. But in the meantime, I'm getting impatient. This is my car. And in the Amish, if you own a buggy, you're going to hop on it and you're going to go. So that's what I did. My buddy was gone on a Saturday. I hop in the car. It's automatic. I just put it in drive, and I'm driving. Oh, man, I thought I was cool. I turned that music up. I'm jamming out the Spice Girls. Tell me what you want, what you really, really want. And then I go around this buggy, and I realize it's my crush from school. Her name was Edna. And I'm like, she's got to see who this is. I want her to see my freedom. So I made sure I was waving, and I was so distracted. I drove that car right off the curve, rolled that car, totaled it. When it came to a stop, it was still, the Spice Girls were still asking me in the song, tell me what you want, what you really, really want. I'm like, I don't want this now. Yeah. So I learned the hard way. I realized that if I want to make it out here, I'm going to have to listen to my buddy that, wanted to help me out. Just because I don't have Amish rules, don't mean I don't have,
Yeah, we got a set of rules out here. The government for sure does. Did Edna see you?
Oh, she saw me, but she also saw me once I rolled. So,
yeah, so she was definitely staying.
She's like, I'm not.
She's staying in the first order.
Well, I was convinced at that point, Edna probably thought, well, God's punishing him. I'm not leaving the Amish.
Yeah, she's done. She was done for. She ain't ever leaving. She won't even go to the store again after seeing that. So what was communication like with your family after you left?
I didn't go back for many years because I knew that they were heartbroken. I knew my mom, she was bawling. My brother even told me she was bawling for days. Yeah. Because she believed that, I just gave myself over to the devil.
In her world, you basically just entered hell, basically, right? Yeah. What was it like? So you said years. What was it like? Who was the first person you got a hold of? Who was the first family member that you got a hold of after you left?
He actually got a hold of me, and it was my dad.
Really?
I got a job at the pallet shop right next door because my buddy worked there, and the boss told him to let me know that he'll give me a job. So I go in the next day. He took me, of course, to get a haircut, and that was uncomfortable because peeling that hair off, and now I'm wearing jeans and a T-shirt, and I walk in to start working, and here comes my dad. I mean, my heart sunk because I had a diary where I wrote all of my pain. You don't talk to nobody about, that shows weakness if a man cries. So you don't talk about my pain I was going through, but I wrote it all in that diary, and I forgot the diary. My dad comes down, and I see that diary in his hand, and I'm like, it broke my heart because I'm like, now he read everything I said about him. I mean, I cussed him out in there when the days when he was the worst and beat me physically.
Yeah.
So he comes down, and I've never seen my dad cry. He looks at me, and he has just a river of tears flowing down his chin. And through those choked up tears, he says, now I know why you left the Amish. And he held that diary up. And I snatched that diary out of his hand, turned around, and I threw it in the dumpster. I didn't want to see him hurt like that. But that showed me something. Oh, my goodness. My dad loves me. Yeah. And out of nowhere, when I threw it in the dumpster, my dad comes up there, gave me the biggest. I've never had dad hug. Amish don't show compassion, like that. They're not affectionate people. And so he comes up and gave me the biggest, tightest hug, and he's bawling. He says, I love you. And that's where our relationship started. Secretly, we were starting to meet up. We even drank together after, without the church and the family knowing.
So you started to build a relationship with him after you left.
Yeah.
So what was that like? And I mean, obviously, he had to have thought before that he wanted to leave. Yep. With the lifestyle, with the decisions it seems like he was making, I'm sure the thought had crossed his mind. So how did he respond to you actually getting out? Was it kind of like, I'm happy you got out, or
right? Yeah, I realized pretty quickly that Dad was actually happy for me. So when he came to my house, which I had just met my wife, we were dating at that time, and he'd come to our house and he was just letting loose. He'd pour out his heart, how he was feeling. He was cussing the bishop and all the stuff that's going on. I'm just so sick of it. And then he said, I'm going to leave the Amish. He said that before, and I didn't take him serious,
Yeah.
So I left in 98 when I turned 18. So I saw my dad here and there get a hold of me with the pallet shop phone number, and I'd go pick him up late in the evenings. That happened for the next 5 years, from 98 to 2003. And then he said something one day. He was in a barn raising and hurt his back, so he's home from church. I mean, he's hurt pretty bad. He said, Eli, I'm not just saying it. I'm going to join you. Can I live with you? I said, well, yeah, you can live with me, of course. And so he gave me a date and a time on a Sunday morning when everybody goes to church. Now I realize he's not just saying it. He set the date and time himself. And so it was on a Sunday morning, June 17, 2003. I remember the day very well because I was well prepared. I was going to have my dad and have a relationship with him. I'm excited, right? Mm-hmm. But on Saturday, we're planning all of this. Me and my wife are talking about it. We're like, we need a bigger vehicle. We don't just have enough room with this little car. Let's go ahead and go to the dealership and see if we can get a bigger SUV so we can pick up Dad's stuff. And we're there. The deal ain't made yet. And we're still trying to get a loan, my first loan, and I get a phone call from my Amish twin brother, Eli Yoder, in Tennessee, where he lived, because they got phone check. He said, you ain't going to believe this. And I said, what? He said, Dad just committed suicide. Oh. That hit me like you wouldn't believe. I blamed myself for many years because did I not gain his trust? Did I not say something right? What made it? See, my brother, when he told me this bad news, nobody knew that I was about to pick my dad up to leave the Amish. Now, I know he loved all of my other siblings. There's 10 of us. There's 2 sets of twins in my family. I'm the only one that's left the Amish. Why would he just choose me? But I was struggling with why. So now that is the moment when I went into really deep alcoholism. I just about destroyed my life. I had DUI. I ended up in jail. I mean, I was a mess. And I was literally really, really, really close to joining him at one point. I was that depressed for why he did what he did. I used to lean on his tombstone in the Amish cemetery and I'd drink a case and dump another case down into the ground and just drink with him, talk with him. So that was my lowest point in my life. That's when he did that.
Were you talking with your mom at all at that time?
Not much. It was too painful. I didn't want to talk about it, so I stayed away for a while.
Yeah. So how does the Amish community handle that?
So because he was the first one to die that way in our community, which my grandfather, the bishop, obviously made all the, my mom had to obey that. So they buried him. They were going to bury him outside in a field, no marking. He said that's what we must do because they're God's church. So they view themselves as God's church, so they're going to do the judging for God, right? Mm. So since they didn't have time to vote to forgive him, then they condemn him. And they read an excommunication letter over his grave and buried him separately in a corner. Now, I like that my oldest brother and my mom fought back a little bit. They disagreed to put him outside the cemetery, But then they came back and said, well, we can bury him inside the Amish cemetery, but in the opposite corner, and put a fence around him. So they agreed to that. One thing they forgot. I don't fear the church. You can't shun me. That fence they put around him, I had a little party in the Amish cemetery, and I destroyed that fence. Then they put another one in with metal posts, even deeper, and I had another party and destroyed that fence.
Oh.
So I was fighting the church for a long time there, but he's still by himself. No fence around him, but he's in the opposite corner there. And now I was out recently, and they bought a couple more acres so that they can go out the other side, because the cemetery is filling up and coming towards my dad. So they're going to stop, and they're going to go to the other side, the new section, to bury, because they don't want to get near him. They condemned him.
How long did it take before you did talk to your mom? After that?
5 years after the whole thing happened, I went out, put my Amish clothes on, parked my car next door, and I showed up, and I just talking, didn't want to bring it up. I was watching to see if she'll bring it up. Then she finally did, and I was shocked what she told me. Now, I wasn't saved yet at that time. I was not a believer. I ran from God. I didn't care about Christianity. But one thing that meant a lot to me later on when I got saved, but I was happy to hear it at the time, though. She said this: when we heard the gunshot behind the barn, we didn't know where it came from. It's not unusual for one of my brothers to be out there hunting, target practice or whatever. So they didn't really pay much attention, because my dad was out there for a while by himself, over an hour. When my youngest brother found him, he was on his knees praying. And I'm not going to go into details what all he looked like, but one thing that stands out to me, my mom said, then he came screaming to the house. Mom follows him out there. They see Dad on his knees down there with the injury, and he is praying the Lord's Prayer in German. And he's asking God for forgiveness for all the sins that he had done, including the one he had just committed with his self-injury. That I needed to hear, because I realized he was confessing that sin to the Lord. And it didn't matter. Once I got saved and understand the plan of salvation, I realized, just like the thief on the cross was saved the last minute, that's what God did the last minute with my dad. So what the church done means nothing now to me, because God saved my daddy, Henry Yoder, the last minute.
Man.
Because he was still alive. God gave that. And what he showed me later as I was praying into it, I believe the Lord showed me that was a testimony. God allowed it to play out that way. It was a testimony to the Amish church, and it went right over their head.
Yeah. Because there was, gosh, it's both things, kind of. It's both and. You know what I mean? Like they put judgment on him, but at the same time, there are good things that they had taught him for him to be in a position with, when you got a couple moments left, that's where you go. I mean, that kind of shows his heart too, even with all of the mess and the mistakes and all of the rebellion and everything like that, for him to, that's where you go to. You know what I mean? Is kind of a testimony to a lot of the things he was taught.
Yeah. And then later, of course, I was out at the funeral, had my Amish clothes on.
So you were allowed to go to the funeral?
Only if I wear Amish clothes.
Okay.
Yeah. And then I was even allowed, since I dressed up in my Amish clothes, I was allowed to stay on the buggy and even hold one of my brothers on the way to the graveyard. So that was special. But I left early and did not witness. Later on, I found out that they did, in fact, read off an excommunication letter over his grave and gave him over to the devil. They did a little ceremony where if the Amish church didn't have the chance to forgive that individual, they will do a letter where they pray and give you to the devil.
That just seems a bit over the top, doesn't it? I mean, you're sitting around thinking about what the rules are going to be, and you're like, well, hey, let's not forget that if you do X, Y, or Z, that's very, gosh. And I feel like if you were a kid watching that, or anybody watching that, that's pretty intense.
Yeah.
I mean, that would strike a lot of fear into your heart. These people have the authority to hand me over to the devil is.
And there was another Amish man that ended up doing the same thing a few years later, and they did bury him in the middle of the field, no marking. The horses, the goats, the cows are running over all of. You can even see where he's buried. And
that's a big deal to them, right?
Yeah.
Like for me, when I pass away, I don't care what my girls do, you know what I mean? But for them and the tradition and everything, to just be thrown out in a field, kind of, it is pretty a disrespectful way to go, I would say.
Right.
So your mom told you kind of how that all went down, and you do have a relationship with her now.
Yes. I didn't for a long time because I was angry. My resentment turned into bitterness. Bitterness turned to anger. Anger turned into hatred. And I felt like I needed to be a voice for my dad. And I fought back, and I knew it's against their religion, but I put fake flowers, real flowers. I started doing videos when I first started my social media platform. A lot of my followers would even stop by there. All at once, in the corner where Dad is by himself, is loaded with flowers and decorations, and it don't even look like an Amish cemetery.
And you're not supposed to do that.
You're not supposed to do that.
Oh.
So my mom cuts me off and said, "Don't you ever come back to visit since you're doing all of this," because she has customers buying eggs and candies and bread and pies. They talk. Yeah. She learned everything I was doing, and she said, "And do you not even come to my funeral when I die?" She was angry.
Yeah.
So last year, 2025 in March, I was praying, and I was praying for my mom, asking God to soften her heart. But what he in fact did is put some conviction on my heart to, I can't bring my dad back. Just go out there and reconcile with your mom. And I did. I went out and asked her, I said, "What can I do to make it right?" And she said, "Go remove everything from Dad's grave." And I did right then and there. I went straight out, removed it all, came back. We actually cried together, got my first mama hug, and now I can go out and visit as much as I want. And I know I won't regret that when my mom dies, because making peace.
I mean, for her, like, so on the outside looking in, it could be like, what's the big deal? But for her, right. That's her that's her life, and her belief is like, you know what I mean? Doing that is a form of disrespect, whatever it is. Right. You know what I mean? That's a big deal to her. So that's awesome. So when you left, you're out, you know what I mean? You're out partying, and then this happens with your father, and you get into a dark place where you're almost thinking about taking the same path. How do we go from there? And drinking, and were you experimenting with pills and everything like that? Were you driving a truck then?
No.
Okay, good. Because if you were driving a truck and you were in that, but so like, how do you go from? How do we get from that dark place? What pulled you out of it?
Well, I clearly only knew to do what I saw my dad do, and that was drink to numb the pain. So I did until with some people I was working with at the time, got me introduced to some coke. So I'm doing harder drugs now to numb the pain. And I knew that my wife was going to put her foot down, because she got to where she said, "Look, we got a newborn son here in 2006. By 2004, I had a DUI. By 2006, it was such a level to where she said, it's either me or the alcohol. You got a choice to make." And I just couldn't do it. And she left for a little bit. You know, there was a couple of evenings where she stayed away, and I was wrestling with this. How do I overcome this? And then one night, I'm just completely trash drunk. She had to help me get in bed. 2 hours later, I'm completely alert, looking at the ceiling. And I'm like, why am I wide awake? Normally it'd take me hours and hours to do this, you know, to wake up out of a mess like that. She had to help me in bed. I'm sloppy drunk. So then I get up out of bed, and I'm like, I got to change. That's it. I'm going to have to go out and just splatter my beers. You know, I don't want to, but I feel this urge. I need to go do it. So I walk out in my garage refrigerator, and I just start splattering my beers. And the door opens up, and my wife's standing there, bawling. She goes, "What are you doing?" I said, "I don't know. I like my beer. I guess I'm done." And then she says this. This is where my faith started. She said, "I laid there and I told God, I'm going to have to divorce that man if you don't change his heart. And I'm not going to go to sleep until you answer." And she laid there praying all night long until she saw me get out of bed and do that.
And so you wake up and you're just, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And you don't even know why, because you're like, I like my beer, but here I am.
I knew it. See, I knew God was real. I was taught about Amish teaching about God.
Yeah.
But at that moment, I knew that if God can hear my wife's prayer, he can hear me if I pour my heart out with my dad's situation, all the pain. That's where everything turned. So when you ask the question, how did I get myself out of that dark hole? That evening when that happened, that was the turning point.
So it was Jesus Christ and your wife praying. Yeah.
God used my wife to get me to that point where I can then start seeking. And that's when I started actually seeking the Lord. I started getting a Bible and actually reading it and start, you know.
How was that? What was the transition? So do like the Amish operate out of the same Bible we do?
No, we had to have the 1522 version, Martin Luther translation. Mm-hmm. It had to be German, we were taught. But here's the downfall for the Amish in my group. Not all of them are the same. Some have English Bibles, but we were taught you cannot interpret salvation. That is the English worldly people saying they're saved through faith, and then they live of the world and have electricity and cars. So we were warned that if anybody says you're saved, that's the devil deceiving them. So we could read, we had scriptures to back up why we have to be separate from the world, different from the world, all of that. But we were not allowed to interpret salvation. That was the danger zone.
So you start reading the Bible, and so do you feel like that night was your encounter moment, or?
Nope.
Well, let's hear it.
2017. I had read the Bible here and there, even returned back to some alcohol when my wife wasn't watching, even got addicted to porn. I mean, I'm talking just some of the same stuff I was already trying to lay down because I love my wife. I love my son. I wanted to keep my wife. I didn't want her to leave me. So I decided that I'm going to go ahead and go back Amish. After everything I had been through, I'm like, I'm going to have to please God. I know he's really hurt my wife's prayer, so how do I please this God? See, the first mentality us humans think is, okay, I fall short of the glory of God, now I got to do something. Rather than seeing it with Jesus already did it, I couldn't see that because I viewed God as an angry being on a throne in heaven, and he's angry at me. So I didn't see a gracious, loving God. So I thought, I got to fix myself. So when I prepared to go back Amish, my cousin that left the Amish shortly after me got furious with me. And he slammed his fist down and he said, Eli, make me a promise before you go back. I said, yeah, what is it? He goes, make me a promise. You're going to read an English version of the Bible before you return back to the Amish. I said, fine. And when I find the verse that justifies me going back to the Amish, I'll show you. He goes, fine. And I sat there in my semi-truck that week, and I was praying, and I was reading my Bible. Now, I had done this before, and I laid it down a couple of verses, hoping God's pleased with me by reading a couple of verses, and go back to porn. And I was watching more bad stuff than I was reading the Word.
Yeah.
But this day, something was different. And I was in John 14. And I stopped. I had just read verse 6. Jesus said, I'm the only way, the truth, and the life. Now I get down into the 20 verses, and I stopped, and I got angry, and I screamed at God. I said, God, if you're real, I need to hear from you. You need to show yourself from me. I'm planning on going Amish. Right now, I'm in a semi-truck planning on going Amish, but there's no Amish between me and you. There's no religion between me and you. It's me, and if this is your word, speak to me. And I looked back down and read 26, where Jesus was getting ready to ascend, and he said, I leave the Comforter, the Teacher, the Holy Spirit to lead you and guide you and remind you all that I said to you. And at that moment, the word manifested. I felt what I call the glory of God come over me, like the peace. It filled me with peace, like a burning. The Emmaus walk, when they were walking with Jesus, and then he just disappeared? They said, when he was walking with us, did our hearts not burn within ourselves? My heart burned. I was like on fire. Then the next verse 27, Jesus said, my peace I give to you, not as the world gives do I give to you. Let not your heart be troubled. And that is when I just bawled. Yeah. I felt the glory of God, and I bawled. And that is when I knew he wanted to have a relationship with me. And I called my cousin, and I said, hey, I'm not going back Amish. He goes, why? I said, I'm saved.
Oh, praise God.
That's when I believed God for the first time and realized I don't have to go do something. He wants in here in my heart.
I'm saved. What a powerful statement. If you're listening, you have got to read the Bible for yourself, and we need guided. You do need to be discipled. Don't get in there because we have you got to be filled with Holy Spirit. He's got to guide you through it. But if you're listening, a lot of times the answer's in the Bible, and you need to be discipled and taught.
Yes.
But don't let people tell you what the Bible's saying without checking into it yourself and doing your own background research, because more so than all the demonic stuff we see in the world today and all of this stuff, the most dangerous thing you can do is be misled by somebody that you trust spiritually, or be misled and think that you understand the Bible because you heard somebody else preach a sermon on it. You get into it on your own, and you do need, even me, after my years of being saved, I have people that help guide me through the Bible, but the good ones are always like, read it for yourself, always, or we're reading it together, and there's so much power. I can't, we've gotten to a place where we have so much access. And this is what I was telling somebody, talking to somebody about the other day. I ordered a Bible on Amazon. I was really excited about. My pastor was like, you got to check it out. It's like the lambskin. Pastor Nate, love you. But he, you got to do it. This is for like, when you're going to preach, it's so light and mobile, like this Bible. And it comes up in a box at Amazon, and I open it. And for a split second, I just set it down and I felt convicted. I was like, I can order a Bible to my house, and there's people in China right now holding on to one page of that thing. And they might bump into somebody else that has a page that, if you don't know what I'm talking about, like literally what they go through to just learn, and they know that page. And that may be the only Bible they ever get is a page that they got, because a lot of them you can't keep a whole Bible. It is but we're so, like, for me, I'm so spoiled. We have Bibles so we do the service, and this is the building that we do the service in, and we ask people for Bibles to hand them out, and we got hundreds. We have these things laying around everywhere, but there's places where that is bigger and greater than gold. And there's a reason for that. There's a reason why it's that book. There's a reason why the world, if it's not with us, it hates that book. There's a reason people have to hide that book, because there's so much, all of your answers are in it. The keys to understanding your Father, the best that we're going to, are in it. And so if you're listening, don't bypass how important it is. It's cool to do devotions and stuff, but to dig into that thing and be like, if you're reading something, who were they writing this to? Who's writing this? What was the point of writing this? And you start to understand, like, this beautiful book that's full of encouragement, but truth as well. Like, if somebody can misteach you, we go from glory to glory. That doesn't mean from Cadillac to Cadillac. That doesn't mean from trailer to mansion. Because if you look what, like, Paul's life, we've talked about this, glory to glory in Paul's life doesn't look like what I would consider glory. Going from one town to the next, getting beat, thrown in prison, and threatened death, that's not glory to glory to me. You know what I mean? But the glory to glory is like knowing him, and we're always one step closer to eternal life with our Father, So that's beautiful. He found it in the Bible, people. Yeah. Imagine that.
And I praise God for allowing me to get saved while reading his word, because now that's what I use, the truth. John 8:32, it says, if you know the truth shall set you free. And since he used that truth to set me free, I want to use that truth and tell people how I discovered the truth. And read your Bible. If somebody gets saved reading the Bible, then the Holy Spirit is in your heart. Don't overthink it. You're no different than Paul was. We receive him through faith, and then he leads us to gather at that church. He leads us and guides us and teaches us just because, the way the word says. He doesn't lie. Yeah. You seek, you shall find. But I think we're in the mentality of, well, if I just go to church this Sunday, maybe God will be happy, because that was my mindset before I got saved. I'm like, well, I got to go Amish to please God. See, that's how we think. We think, well, we got to do something, rather than viewing it through the lens of Jesus. He loves us, he forgave us, and he wants to live in our hearts.
I know there was a time when I've made a fair share of mistakes, and I felt, I had stepped back from everything, and I was sitting at the table, and, I was kind of I still loved God, but I was kind of doing my own thing again, and I remember sitting there, because I loved, I loved telling people about Jesus. I don't care about the microphones and stuff. This is cool, but I will tell you at the gas station. You get what I'm saying? That's how we got to this place. A lot of people will tell me sometimes, like, hey, how do I get to do what you do? And it's like, what I do is, like, in its most purest, beautiful form, is if somebody needs prayer, I pray for them. If somebody needs to hear about Jesus, I tell them. That's the most important thing that I do. I love helping get stories out, and, I love giving my testimony and everything like that. But what's truly important is, those interactions that you might have with somebody at Steak and Shake when you're busy and you don't want to stop and talk, but you should. And I think that's another interesting thing. Something had just crossed my mind, and it left me. But you had said, what did you say? Well, just keep talking and we'll get back to it. It'll pop back in there. So you found it in the Bible. We were talking about Paul and glory to glory, and I was telling that story. So I'm sitting at the table and I'm talking to God, and I had missed it, because I stepped down from everything. I was showing up to celebrate recovery and stuff, but I missed, like, the interaction I had with people, and because I was sitting to myself and I was sitting there and I was eating pizza because I had let myself just completely go. I wouldn't get my hair cut, nothing. And I was like, God, what do I have to do to get back into your good graces? And I don't know if you've ever felt like Holy Spirit kind of laugh at you, but that's what it felt like. And then I heard, like, what do you think you did to begin with to get there? And I was like, oh. And then I started to reflect. It was like, I thought speaking and telling 80 people about Jesus, like, I'm collecting something in the spiritual bank. And I'm starting to look at other people and be like, well, what are you doing? You know what I mean? Like, I witnessed, and I had got to that fall was actually God's grace, so he could reel me back in and be like, your ego went someplace where that's going to be a really interesting conversation to have to Jesus one day. Like, hey, man, I'm glad I earned myself in your good graces. And he's like, hold on, bub. I found you when you had nothing. You know what I mean? All of that stuff you think you're doing, that was what I gave you that. That's a door that I opened. It's not there without me. And I realized, like, man, we have got to be very careful thinking that I'm out here earning some special place, or I've earned my, and that was my thought. That's what was distancing me from God, was saying, what do I have to do to get back into your good graces? Which there's nothing biblical about that.
Right.
You know what I mean? And it's actually the opposite of that. It was like, I thought I was starting to have a lot of faith in myself.
Right. It's easy to get distracted, man.
It really is. Because you are, like, you're doing it for the right reasons at first, and then something happens. And I'm grateful for that. There was humiliation in that. I fell on my face, like, that whole process, what a year I sat. Like, it wasn't my favorite time, but then just that voice. And I almost cried again, because it's like, I hear God. Like, like, he's still there. I would have gave up on me, I would have gave up on me. Like, this dude's too hard-headed. And look at him down there taking glory. I had to be in that situation. I was taking glory and credit that should have been God's at some point there. And then to have some negotiation with God, like, what do I got to do? Tell me the 10 things I can do to, to glorify you, to get you to, love me back.
Right.
Yeah.
All at once became like a good works kind of mentality. Yeah. Oh yeah. But praise God for his grace. It picks us right back up.
Yeah. It humbled me. I stood up from that table, and like, I catch myself now, and it's like, I don't go up there, we'll have this service and stuff. I'm not pointing at people and preaching at people anymore. You know what I mean? I'm coming from a humbly broken place and very transparent. Like, you know what I mean? I am still learning, and I'm never going to stop. I'm never going to stop. So that's powerful. And now you've written a book, and you get to witness to people on a regular basis. Like, how awesome is that?
Yeah, it's just amazing what God did after that. That's where my ministry started. I was already doing videos, just kind of doing some Q&A Amish, teaching people about the Amish culture. And then I started sharing my faith and just the testimony. I mean, I didn't even have to preach. I just shared my testimony, how I found the truth, and people just started flocking to my page, and it started growing, because I realized pretty quickly many people were church hurt. Many people couldn't measure up to keep the requirements of where they come from. It wasn't just my people, the Amish, that had rules and legalism. I was discovering that there's many denominations out here. Now, once I started doing, like, in 2017 and into 18, I started doing, like, testimony interviews and just interviewing people that came out of the Amish, and it just blew up because a lot of people could relate to the testimony.
I think it's very interesting, because, like, watching some of your stuff, I have no knowledge of the Amish whatsoever. Like, I've seen them out and about when we go up in northern Indiana, like Shipshewana and stuff, and they have there's restaurants that are Amish restaurants and stuff, but I have no understanding whatsoever. But there was some stuff that I saw you talking about, and, like, that hit home, and it's like, it's crazy, because it's all parallel.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? If it is like, we're not really fighting flesh and blood, it's all parallel, and controlling spirits and stuff like that. And you have to give some of the people grace, because, like, they're doing it out of what they see as love, but seeing a lot of your some of your content, it hits home for me or anybody else that may have had some wounds. So I'm assuming it's not just Amish people that get a hold of you, right?
Oh, yeah. There's been so many different Jehovah's Witness, Mormon, Catholics. The other day I had a Catholic testimony. They were going to church. They thought they were pleasing God by just following what they were taught. Their mom and dad, they raised them in the Catholic church. And she got across my testimony And it shook her to her core. She went and opened her Bible, started praying and seeking, on her knees. And before you knew it, she felt the Holy Spirit, and it changed her entire life. And now she says, I'm not Catholic anymore. I'm saved. I'm a born-again Christian. Now I know. But one thing that stood out to me. So she was going to church, she said, Catholic, devoted, obeying the parents. But she always doubted her salvation.
Yeah.
Now, she doesn't have to doubt her salvation.
Yeah.
Once we're connected with God, we have peace. He fulfills that void that is in our hearts that we're seeking. We have to have a connection with him, have a relationship with him. When a person has that, you can see it. You have the peace, like Paul said, to live is Christ, to die is gain. You know where you're going now, and you can see that shift.
Yeah. And just the denomination and all of that stuff doesn't really matter. You can have that within any of them.
Oh, yeah.
You know what I mean?
Absolutely.
I have seen people walking in the light that may claim different things like that. So even some of this, it's specific individual entities and places. It's not so much like the title on it, because you can get a building of people together, no matter what their title is. And if they get on fire for Jesus, they're on fire for Jesus.
Yeah.
And you know what I mean? It doesn't matter what we call them.
Even this lady said, I'm still going to the Catholic Church. My family still goes there. I still go there, but I know I'm saved now. I have a relationship with him, but I had to get into the Word. My testimony of getting saved through the Word encourages people to get into the Word and start seeking the Lord for themselves.
Yeah.
And then you become more like the Word. You have that relationship, that connection with God.
Relationship is so important. That's one of the things we talked about, because I don't think we got back into it, but we have a Friday service that we do here in Marion, and Eli's going to be speaking at it here in just a little bit, and we were talking about like how important interaction is with people. So you just went on a cruise and stuff. Do you have people kind of come up to you just like talking to you and like introducing themselves and telling their stories? Like that probably happens to you quite a bit, huh?
I didn't think it would on a cruise, being all the way down below, the Caribbean islands, down in Virgin Islands, way down there. And on that cruise ship for 7 days, I had 62 people that recognized me and came up and talked to me.
So did you have a chance to kind of witness to them and hear their stories? And what a beautiful life, huh? Even though it may seem exhausting to some people, it's like what an honor it is for people to see you as somebody that like, hey, I want you to hear my Jesus story, or I want to share my pain with you. Yeah, so important.
It's a blessing just to be able to. We are the church. As believers, we are the church, and wherever we go, we can be an encouragement to people and share our faith with people and fellowship together. We were sitting at the smoke deck where people were smoking. I'm just observing and listening. Before I know it, we're talking about Jesus, and somebody pops up and goes, I want to know if I'm saved, and I'm praying over people. And then more hear it, and then we have an hour of just praying, and it was beautiful.
My grandpa, before he passed away, he was a funny man, but even after he quit smoking, when restaurants had the smoking sections, he was still sitting in the smoking section. And everybody was like, why do you do that? He was like, better company. He never left the smoking sections.
Right.
So I think that, we've covered a lot. I really appreciate you coming on. I was excited about it. It's been really cool, actually, to get to know you. 5:50? 5:30. 5:30. Nathan, you're going to have to cut that part. So we got a few minutes. What are you thinking, Zach? You got any questions? So we'll just pick back up. I'll do something so you can see that. Zico, you got any questions for Eli?
I did. I was sitting over there thinking, but now I forgot. I've been listening.
Well, that's not very helpful. What do you what's the most, outside of like the faith thing, what's the question you get asked the most? What do you feel like you get the most of?
Well, a lot of people are always thinking the Amish culture where I'm from, they got it all together, that they are Christians. And so they're shocked. That's number one. I thought they're Christians. Are they not Christians? I'm like, well, just like any other denomination, they claim to be Christian. They say they're Christians. They'll answer you that way. But they don't know the church system and how it works. So that's been the biggest shock to people as I do Q&As. Yeah. You're like, wait a minute. I thought they have it all together. I thought they're Christians, So that's probably the number one question I get.
Yeah. And again, some of them, there's true Christians in all of the different things, you know what I mean? And we hear a lot of the stories about control, you know what I mean? And I think even that, like when you break some of it down, like I feel like some people control almost out of like the Finding Nemo thing of like, I don't want anybody to get hurt.
Right.
And then a couple generations go by and you have yourself a system that is
Yeah.
actually hurting people. You just can't see it because
Yeah.
it's like, it's like that frantic control thing. So like with your book, what is it about? I haven't had a chance to read it yet.
Yeah, it's called Undeceived because I clearly, when I found the truth, I realized how deceived I was. So I named it Undeceived, but it's got my whole story, of growing up Amish, my experience, childhood, the trauma, the abuse, all the way through disqualifying for baptism. And then after I left, all the struggles that came with after I left, trying to get adapted to the non-Amish lifestyle. And then, of course, my testimony all the way until 2017 when I got saved, which that's 19 years of alcoholism and drugs.
Yeah.
And drugs was very short-lived because I realized it was so good that it was going, oh, man, because I was already addicted to alcohol. I'm like, this is way worse. I mean, I liked it so much. I was up all night long tripping. I didn't even have to go to sleep. I'm like, man, this really took care of the pain.
Yeah.
But it scared me at the same time. I'm like, I know that I have to cut this off now.
Yeah.
So that was short-lived, but I always went back to alcohol. But that was 19 years before I actually got saved and got into the Word.
What an interesting interesting world vision to be, to spend that many years in the Amish community, then that many years in basically alcoholism and everything, then get saved, and now you're spending the years like this. That's you've lived that's kind of a fascinating life, really.
Yeah, and I put that all in my book just because now sharing the testimony is important.
Yeah.
But in the book, I never thought that people would respond back to my website with thousands of testimonies how they got saved after reading my book. It's like the Bible.
Yeah.
They see what I did, and God uses that. See, Revelation 12:11 is happening. They overcame by the blood of the Lamb and by the word of their testimony, and loved not even their lives unto death. I love that because when we share our testimonies, God uses it to help other people. He draws them to Him by just sharing how you got saved, what Jesus means to you, and that's been a blessing to be on a platform. I use 6 different platforms and just share that testimony, and then the book that has my testimony.
Where can people get the book from?
Just my name, EliYoder.com.
So you just go to EliYoder.com.
It's available all the online bookstores, Amazon, Barnes & Noble, all that stuff too.
So, Eli, can they also, is there links to your social media on your webpage?
It's in every one of them.
So, I mean, I recommend if you're on TikTok, check it out. His TikTok's great, and he's got this backdrop, and somebody was telling him he needed to iron the backdrop. What was your response?
Oh man, I get some wild and that's not everybody's going to be nice. Obviously, we have a platform like I have, but it was bothering them to where they said they couldn't listen to the gospel. Them creases have got to go. I'm like, okay, now I'm really going to leave it there.
I think that's one of the things I love about your page is it's not, you haven't sat there and polished everything up. You know what I mean? You didn't bring in like a wrecking crew and be like, I got to have, it's like it just, you know what I mean? And if somebody has something to say about that, instead of like, you know what I mean? Some of us may be like, oh yeah, maybe I do need to change that. He's like, no, it's still there. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Love it. That's so cool.
I mean, I have a humorous side. My dad was humorous. So lots of times I respond back to some of the negative people with humor, and it silences them. They're like, whoa, I thought he's going to let that one go.
You're supposed to be a mad, angry Christian, right? Like you're supposed to argue with everybody all the time. Oh, Eli. So yeah, go check him out. Check his platforms out. It's really, actually, to be honest with you, it's really uplifting. And there's a lot of stuff, Zach, that like I get informed, because now what's going on in the world is like beef tallow, stuff like that our grandparents used to use for stuff. We're going back to that. Like, oh yeah, it actually worked. I remember one time my grandpa looked at me because I was using like Dove soap, and he was like, "That's face soap," and I was like, "Oh, you ignorant old man," but he was right. You know what I'm saying? Like all these years later, it's like you find out he's right. So there's so many things that actually from that Amish culture that are healthy, and people are like reintroducing is like, oh, there is like all of these health benefits to living this, this way, and canning, and, the way with the meat and everything. And also in case of like, a catastrophe, like they've got that part figured out. But that's something I've, over the last year, peptides and all this stuff are starting to get popular. And it's like, this is just basically a breakdown of what my grandma and grandpa tried to tell me were the way to do things. Baking soda for everything. You know what I mean? It's like they used it for every, they used beef tallow. You can cook with it. They use it as soap, all this stuff. And it's like, you serious? Yeah, my tattoo guy, he sent me home with some. And I was like, tallow, and I started to Google it, and I was like, it's just basically beef grease, you know what I mean? Oh, so yeah, go check out the website. We're excited because he's actually going to be sharing with us tonight. Do you know what you're going to talk about?
Yeah, the rejection part. I went into kind of a little bit. One of the biggest things that I realized later on after I got saved is all the things that triggered me to go to alcohol and things. All the reasons I left the Amish, the number one reason would be rejection. I didn't feel like I could measure up. So my main topic tonight will be rejection and what that resulted in my life, what that leads to.
It's going to be good. We're excited. You got anything, Zach?
No, other than I am always interested in you showing like your flu medicine and the medicine stuff like that, because my aunt, my great aunt, and my grandma makes their own medicine for like the flu and colds and stuff. So that stuff always intrigues me.
Yeah. So Zach was saying like the stuff that you do for like flus and colds and stuff. Is that strong? I feel like the garlic and stuff would be.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like this morning when I took a spoonful of the what I call antibiotics, home remedy that I mixed together. I got the ingredients for it that I did the video on. It's got a spoon of cayenne pepper and black pepper in that. And when you mix it all together, when you swallow that, it has a sting to it. But
it's opening you up.
But it's the natural ingredients that you need for. And I've never ever gotten the flu or got bronchitis or pneumonia. None of that nasal drainage ever since I've been taking that stuff. It works. I mean, it worked for us when I was growing up. It still works today.
That's cool. Do the Amish use ivermectin? Like
for the animals, yes.
So they actually use it. Do they deworm like as humans? How do they do that?
Well, they take ivermectin.
So they
we had animal stuff that we took for even the hogs and the cattle. We took stuff like that. My grandfather, he was actually very educated in home remedies and stuff that he mixed together that would work. He was considered like the Amish doctor.
Yeah.
So he would come to homes and check out people what their problem was, and he would put some concoction together, and before you know it, you're getting better.
Yeah.
If I got a deep cut, they would come over and they would put the aloe vera plant and take a leaf off and wrap it around there and wrap it up. I mean, that's what we did with home remedies.
You use honey a lot? You have the hives and everything?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. That's what I worked with my friend Devin. He's probably upstairs, Devin Case, and just one spring, and it was fascinating when I started to research. It's like you can use that for anything. They use that on cuts and stuff too. It's wild. So that's cool to know that they use that, because the deworming thing, I saw this has nothing to do with the podcast really, but I saw that in other countries they do that at least like once a year, but some of them on a regular basis, and then here we don't. But we used to. From what I understand is back when we were on farms and stuff, it was something, you know what I mean? Because like obviously like you're going to collect that stuff through the years. I'm gonna have to look into that. Awesome. All right, well, I think it's about time to head upstairs. I really appreciate you coming on, Eli. That was a good conversation. We'll have to have you back. I'm assuming that we'll, over in the future we'll be having you back here, and I'm excited for that. But that was great. I was looking forward to having you on, and I wasn't sure how the conversation was go, but it really flowed from the minute you got here, even when we were talking before. So if you guys haven't, go check Eli out on eliyoder.com. You can get his book there, get onto all of his social medias. Highly recommend it. It's a lot of good content. Some of it's really funny, some of it's informative, and then it's a lot of stuff about Jesus, and we praise God for that. So go check him out. If you haven't subscribed to the podcast, we are on YouTube, Spotify, and Apple Podcast. Go check us out. Subscribe. Give us a review if you can, and share this episode with a friend. We love you guys. Eli, do you have anything else to say to the people before you close out?
Well, what comes to mind right away is just be you. God loves you. You're right where you're at. You don't have to change anything. Today's a day of salvation. I mean, he wants into your heart. Doesn't matter what you were taught. Most people will deviate, and they want you to fit in and change who you are so that you can be accepted. Most people will change to be accepted, but be who you are, accept who you are right now, and just call out the way I did in my testimony. Just call out, because he wants into your heart, and he'll add on to you everything he has for you.
He's got a plan for you.
Yes. Amen.
Praise God. Thank you so much, Eli. Thank you, Zico and Nathan. We appreciate y'all. You guys check us out next week. We love you. Go follow us on all the platforms and go check out EliYoder.com. Get the book and check out the TikToks and everything else. Thank you so much for tuning into this episode today. Make sure you subscribe to our channels and follow us and give us reviews on all of the platforms. If you really liked what you heard today, share it with somebody that you care about. Thank you. We love you.